All right, so this is really a weird one. So essentially what happened is a couple days ago on stream, I recorded a video of me reacting to Exclusive Ace's video, talking about his opinions on what was going on with matchmaking in Black Ops 7, whether or not there's skill-based matchmaking, and you're going to see that part first, that video that I recorded. However, yesterday he put out another video, which I'm guessing he tested skill-based matchmaking and found something interesting. Now, I don't know what that something is yet, but the title of the video is skill really minimally considered in Black Ops 7? And based off of what I've seen on Reddit and everything, apparently skill-based matchmaking might be back, never went anywhere. I don't know, but we'll see what he has to say. First, though, we need to dive into the original video.
What's up, guys? My name is Ace, and a very hot topic in the community right now for Black Ops 7 is the matchmaking situation, because many have been claiming that this style of matchmaking doesn't match their experience from the open matchmaking in the beta build of the game, and also, therefore, doesn't match their experience with pre-Modern Warfare 2019 CODs, where skill was a minimally considered factor. Now, as much as I'd love to do a very detailed scientific breakdown collecting data on all of this, unfortunately, this isn't something I feel comfortable testing with any sort of accuracy when it comes to collecting empirical data, simply because there are far too many variables at play, combined with the fact that we don't have access to the API, so we can't look up all the players' stats in.
Yeah, the only thing that you could actually do is go on one account and go on another account and test the kill deaths, the score per minutes of the players that you're running into on the different accounts in the open matchmaking. And because they say that it's minimally affected, that means it still does affect. Skill is still an effect. Traditionally, if you weren't in the community for older Call of Duty games, one thing I think it was T Martin became popular for doing, I could be wrong, I could have the name wrong, but there was a series, and it was called the 5 kill death challenge, where you would make a new account and try to have a 5 kill death on it. And the reason why you'd make a new account wasn't so you'd have fresh stats. It was because when you made a new account, you played against new players, therefore making it easier. So that has always been a thing.
Our lobbies. As a result, we're gonna have to get a little more anecdotal here, and this is basically what I'm gonna be doing throughout the video, is just sharing what my experiences are and what I feel may be happening with the matchmaking. But I just want to be clear right up front, these are just my thoughts and experiences, and I know experiences with this can vary quite a bit from person to person. Also, as always, when looking at a topic like this, I do try to approach it from different angles and different perspectives, and I have been seeing a lot of really flawed testing methods on both sides, from people saying that this is absolutely the classic matchmaking and it's very minimally considered skill, versus the other side where people are making claims that this is even more strict than we've been seeing in the past 6 years, or it's the exact same matchmaking we've been seeing for the past 6 years. And as always, I tend to fall somewhere in between those extremes because there's often a lot of nuance to this conversation that I feel people on the extremes tend to ignore. But let's start it off.
It's definitely not the same skill-based matchmaking that we've had for the last 6 years, like since Modern Warfare 2019. It's 100% not.
With, in general, just where I stand when it comes to this. How am I feeling about the matchmaking in its current state in the game? Now that we played for an entire weekend at this point, had a decent amount of playtime, and I played around with different modes as well as different team compositions and stuff. How are things feeling for me? Well, from my perspective, interestingly, when I play entirely solo with nobody else joining me, my experience has been generally quite mixed, with a bit of a lean in the direction of more difficult than average lobbies. And that's at least roughly what you would expect when skill is minimally considered. I think that's a key point that many people are missing here when people are saying they claim there'd be no SBMM, but clearly there's SBMM present. They lied to us. No, they've always said it's minimally considered, and therefore it is present at least to some degree. And if you're a very good player with very good stats, you're more likely to play in more difficult lobbies than people that are on the opposite end of the spectrum that are maybe not very good players. However, the key difference here is that it's meant to be a lot less strict than it's been in recent years, and therefore you should see a better mix overall with just, again, a little bit of a skew in the direction of your skill level. And as
I do kind of agree that that's what I've seen, is it almost seems like my lobbies are actually more consistent than they were with skill-based matchmaking before. Because with skill-based matchmaking before, I'd get put through the meat grinder, easy lobby. meat grinder, easy lobby. Like, that's literally how it
As I
felt
said,
like.
while playing solo, for the most part, that's what my experience has been. I played in several really easy lobbies where I'm kind of just stomping on people. I've played in some extremely difficult lobbies where I'm practically getting stomped on, or at least my team's getting stomped on super hard, and I'm just barely keeping my head above the water. And then I played in tons of matches as well, where it just seems like there's a mix of players within the lobby, where I'm clearly seeing that some players on the enemy team are just not very good players at all, but I'm also seeing one or two beasts on the other team in that same match. And overall, that's pretty much what I expected going into the open matchmaking, with skill being minimally considered.
So what does he
and I'm
have to say
actually
about
quite
when he's
happy with
playing
it
with a
overall,
team?
although the team balancing can feel pretty oppressive at times as well, where I can be absolutely going off in a lobby, but still losing the game. But that's...
Yeah, so this has been a thing. So if we go back to old school matchmaking, Black Ops 4 was exactly like this, where there was a little bit of skill affected, but team balancing was a crazy thing. So you would literally, if you were a good player, your team was going to be garbage. It would give you all of the bad players in the lobby on your team. And this game does something similar.
Certainly not new to Call of Duty. However, my experience when partied up, even if I just have one other person join me in the lobby, and it seems to be regardless of their skill level as well, it's suddenly like I'm playing an entirely different game the moment I do that.
Interesting.
And by entirely different, I mean far more competitive and extremely strict when it comes to the matchmaking. In fact, when partied up, I feel like my matchmaking over the weekend has been more difficult than previous years when partied up.
I wonder if that is because, so in older Call of Duties, what used to happen when you would go in to, for example, matchmaking, if you went in solo, it would try to match you with other solos, which typically were worse players. But if you went in with one other teammate, it would match you with a team of 6. It would match you with a team of 4. It didn't care. It would match teams with teams. And I'm wondering if this is like a newer version of that.
And for those that don't know, one of the big ways I've adapted to the matchmaking system over the past several years, like since Modern Warfare 2019, is I realized if you just party up with at least 4 to 6 players, then the modern matchmaking system generally doesn't feel all that bad, because you're just going to be such a dominant force as a team that you can generally overpower that matchmaking system, as well as the team balancing. I think that's a big key as well. It just prevents all of the worst players from ending up on your team. And that's where I found the most enjoyment over the past several years, is when I party up with viewers. And again, it has to be like at least 4 to 6 players so that we really have enough to overpower the system.
That's why we do
and
open lobbies
not
all the
allow
time.
the team balancing to compensate for that. In Black Ops 7, though, the weird thing is, like I said,
The new SBMM is squad-based matchmaking. Oh no.
when I party up, I suddenly feel like I'm playing in a tournament, and nearly every match becomes so incredibly difficult. And we've even been totally stomped on as a team of me and viewers while I'm streaming. And I've even noticed, while partied up with viewers, we tend to lose far more often than we win. And that's the complete opposite experience over the past several years of
I
Call
do
of Duty
actually
when
agree
partied
with
up.
what he's saying
It would
here.
be very rare that we would
In our
ever
open
see a
lobbies,
loss.
I've noticed this
And in
as
general,
well.
that's really where I'm at when it comes to my experience with the matchmaking. Solo has genuinely felt quite good for me, but playing with literally anybody else in my party makes for a totally different experience that is generally far worse. Now again, this is anecdotal. I don't know if there's actually something that they tuned here that really
I would
pushes
agree with
parties
this.
into playing with other parties, or just really messes with the matchmaking to make it so much more
All right.
strict than
We're
it would
about
be.
halfway through this. I want to give what I actually think is going on with matchmaking, right? So the main complaint that people are having about the matchmaking in Black Ops 7 is that it feels different than when they implemented open matchmaking in the beta. Correct? That is people's main complaint. Well, if you look at it from the outside in, take matchmaking out of it, and look at the game and say, okay, well, what is different between the beta and the full launch of the game? And it's simple. The people who are playing the game now are the people who bought it, which means there are less players playing, and the people who are playing are better. So you take away the crappy players and you take away the more players, you're going to be matched with better players more frequently. That is why I truly believe that the matchmaking feels more difficult, stricter, and more like skill-based matchmaking, because the players that are left playing, especially in a bad year of Call of Duty, are gonna be the better players, period. Truly what I believe. And then on top of that, they nerf aim assist, making it so if you're a bad player like myself, it's harder to aim. So all of these things stacked on top of each other, I think make a perfect storm for people to be like, skill-based matchmaking is back and it's worse than ever.
If you weren't partied up. And I mean, if they did do something like that, on paper at least, I'm okay with the general idea of doing that, trying to match parties with other parties to help insulate the majority of solo players.
Like the low player count is a problem when it comes to this. Yeah.
They're not playing against 6 stacks as often while playing solo. That actually sounds pretty fair to me, and I like the idea behind that. But with my experiences, it feels like they've cranked that up to the maximum, to the point where it's just no longer an enjoyable experience at all while partied up, and it's far more fun to play solo. So as of right now, I'm at the point where I really don't want to party up with anyone. I kind of feel bad for my viewers because I always love playing with viewers while I stream. It gives you guys a chance to interact with me a little bit more, and I know a lot of people enjoy playing with me, but as it is right now, it just seems to be making my experience so much worse, and therefore I plan on sticking to solo only, at least for the foreseeable future. So with that in mind, I did want to talk about some of the discourse I've been seeing online, and I think some flawed testing as well. One big thing I've been seeing people do is reverse boost or start a brand new account and then compare the experience on those accounts with their experience on their very high-skilled main account. And then, of course, when doing this, they show that they're getting absolute bot lobbies when they reverse boost compared to their main accounts, which are playing in much more difficult lobbies. And then many of them are using that as evidence that, see, they lied to us. There's definitely...
And again, like I said, before I've seen this video, that is the way that it used to work in Call of Duty as well. When you would create a new account, you would get bot lobbies. And that's why people would do it, specifically YouTubers all the time. People would go out and buy the brand new Xbox Gold and get the same
skill-based matchmaking present. Again, just a reminder, skill is minimally considered, but it is still present, just like it was in pre-Modern Warfare 2019 Call of Duty games, and also just like in those older Call of Duty games, reverse boosting was absolutely a thing. You could 100% reverse boost into a protected bracket all the way back to Black Ops 2 and get like the easiest bot lobbies you've ever seen. And I distinctly remember that was a very common accusation as a YouTuber. Anytime you'd have a really good game, you would see those accusations flying around like crazy that you just reverse boosted for that lobby. So the fact that reverse boosting works in these open playlists isn't really good evidence of anything, because even if matchmaking is identical to a pre-Modern Warfare 2019 Call of Duty game, you would end up seeing the exact same results in that game's lifecycle when reverse boosting. Now, on the flip side, I've also been seeing a lot of pushback against anybody that has been saying that the matchmaking does feel very strict.
People also mentioning the wording classic being removed from the description of the open playlist. I don't remember them saying that, but I could be wrong. Like, are you saying that it was in that description in the beta and is no longer there?
And that they have been having a very difficult and quote-unquote sweaty experience with the game. And I have been seeing a lot of them say like skill issue, or this just proves that you've been protected by matchmaking all these years. And while I do think this is true in a lot of cases, I think some people are realizing now that they have actually been protected in recent years, and they're now seeing a totally different tier of players than what they're used to seeing.
That's definitely true.
At the same time, a lot of these complaints about this are coming from truly high tier players. Like sometimes it's content creators that just play at a very high level, and I know them, I've seen them play, I've played against them at events. I know they are absolutely very good, like outlier level players, and I've even seen some professional players mentioning that the matchmaking feels very strict. And if a professional player is stating that, I tend to take their word for that, because I'm pretty sure they haven't been protected by the matchmaking system.
Yeah, so someone like... When it comes to something like this, someone like a Lunchtime, I would take their opinion on matchmaking much, much more than a Swag, for example. And the reason why I say that is typically Swag is like a pub stomper, whereas Lunchtime, he can pretty much compete with like the best of the best pros. And you could argue that Swag can too, but also Swag wants engagement and stuff. He's right when he says that. There's certain pros where if they're saying that, there's going to be a little bit more meat to this statement.
In recent years when playing pubs. Now, after my experiences, I am really curious to know how many of these people that are mentioning that the matchmaking feels overly strict, I'm curious to know if they've been partying up as well, and maybe they're seeing a similar thing, or if they're having this experience while solo. And one of the big problems with people just sharing their experiences with this is everybody's experience is going to be inherently different due to a wide variety of factors outside of their actual skill level. Like, of course, skill level comes into play, but also the region you live in and the time of day that you play, that also has a huge impact on the types of lobbies that you'll experience. So I think it is also possible that some really good players aren't really experiencing super strict matchmaking, just due to where they live or the time of day they play, whereas others that are maybe a comparable skill level to that same person are having a totally different experience due to their region and the time of day that they play. And again, this just reiterates the fact that testing all of this empirically would be essentially impossible. I know a lot of people wanted me to...
Okay, here's something interesting, okay? This is what I would want someone to test. I would love for you guys to do some testing on this. So with the last 6 years of skill-based matchmaking, the way to get the noobiest lobbies was to play when the least amount of people were online. So if you play at 3 in the morning, they would have to widen up the skill-based matchmaking so you weren't waiting forever in the lobby and you get easier lobbies. Now, technically the best way to get good lobbies would be to play at the busiest times when there's more players. It's literally completely the opposite. I'm curious if that actually makes a difference, because it should be the complete opposite of old skill-based
SBMM testing,
or new skill.
But without that API available, it's just not viable at all. I will say one type of test that I like the most, at least for this, even though it's not perfect by any means, is the time to matchmake test. I do believe that this can be used at least to some degree to judge whether the matchmaking system is as strict as recent years or not. And again, at least while playing solo, my experience with this has been, if I'm searching for the open mosh pit versus the standard mosh pit, I did a few tests with that, even though I'm not really playing in that mosh pit. I'm not interested in playing in that mosh pit. When I search for the standard mosh pit, I get very similar matchmaking times to what I've been used to in recent years with Call of Duty, and that is, it usually takes about 45 seconds to a minute to get me into a lobby on average. Whereas when I search for the open mosh pit, I'm generally getting into games significantly faster than that. Not every single time. Sometimes it does take a little bit longer like that, up to around a minute.
So what is the API that he's talking about? So the back end information. So in other words, he can't see the skill level, the kill death, the various different pieces of information, where players are of the people in his lobby. If he could see that, then he could run a very direct test to see what the skill-based matchmaking, if any, was doing.
But for the most part, I'm getting into matches within 20 to 30 seconds, and that's been practically unheard of on my account in my region over the past 5 or 6 years of Call of Duty. It's been very consistently about 45 seconds to a minute.
I was about this close to doxing Ace, because I was about to say, oh yeah, with where he is, it makes sense that it would take longer. I'm glad I didn't.
On my main account. Although, interestingly with that, when I tested with my dummy account that I use for private match testing, anytime I would do matchmaking tests, I would generally get into lobbies significantly sooner in recent years. So really long matchmaking times can be an indicator of, first off, region, second, the number of people that are searching for that particular playlist, of course, and third, your skill level. If you're a real outlier player, you should be seeing much faster matchmaking times on average in the open mosh pit compared to the standard mosh pit. And if you are, to me, that's at least some evidence that suggests that they're not using the same matchmaking across both. I know some people have been claiming that they rug pulled us on this, and the matchmaking in the open mosh pit is identical to the standard mosh pit. Maybe that's the experience they're having, and maybe the matchmaking times they're experiencing suggest that as well. But again, for me, I've had the opposite experience there, and I've mainly just been having an awful matchmaking experience anytime I party up with anyone.
All right, so here's the second video.
What's guys, my name is Ace, and it does appear we have a problem with Black Ops 7's multiplayer, and potentially a fairly big one that I wanted to shed some light on today, now that we've had some proper time for things to settle in. Now, a couple days after the game came out, there was a lot of talk about skill-based matchmaking not really...
So that's everything we just watched. Everything that he's bringing back up here, we just watched. I gave you my opinions on why I thought we were seeing certain types of matchmaking. Apparently, there's more to it.
Feeling minimal, and definitely not as minimal as the open matchmaking in the beta build of the game. And at the time, I shared just some of my subjective experiences with SBMM, and essentially what my experience was like at the time was that when I played solo, it did seem like I was seeing more of a mix than we've been seeing in recent years of Call of Duty with the more strict SBMM system. And while I still consider my lobbies to generally be skewing in the above average direction, that would be expected to some degree when skill is minimally considered, because skill is still a factor in the matchmaking. It's not the no SBMM playlist.
And you heard my opinion on it based off of less sales, less people playing, everything along those lines.
It's the matchmaking where skill is quote unquote minimally considered. Now, in saying that, the big thing I noticed is the moment I partied up with anybody, regardless of their skill level, it really seemed like a totally different matchmaking experience, and the lobbies were suddenly far more difficult, even if I was just playing with one other person compared to playing solo.
And I've noticed a similar
thing.
thing.
We've had another week or so of the game to play, and for things to settle in a bit more, And I do feel my experience has been changing as time has been going on.
Okay.
I don't know if something has changed on the back end or if maybe just more data is being collected on my account or something. But I have been feeling like my matchmaking times are going up. My connection quality is no longer nearly as consistent as it was early on and as it was in the open matchmaking in the beta build of the game. And then on top of that, I've been noticing that more often than not, my lobbies are a lot more difficult than they were in the first few days.
Dude, he's literally saying, like, he's explaining what skill-based matchmaking does.
And that's not to say that I haven't been getting some easier lobbies here or there, although more often than not, when I get an easier lobby, that just means my teammates are really, really bad and is really relying on me to carry the team. And generally, I can still perform quite well in those lobbies, but I'm often still losing those games by a pretty noticeable margin.
Okay, just to play devil's advocate, you could say that since the game is launched, less people have got off and the people who are staying on the game longer are the better players. So that could acknowledge that, but I'm guessing he has some testing to back up what he's saying. I was just playing devil's advocate just to give both sides of it.
Well, feeling like I'm dominating the enemy team, which is always very interesting, but I mean, team balancing does make sense, as frustrating as that can be to have that happen on a fairly consistent basis. So now that things have settled in a little bit and I have been experiencing this, or I felt like I was experiencing this more, I wanted to do some basic tests at least, just to see if there are any trends that I can notice. Keeping in mind this isn't a really big scientific study or anything, the sample size is fairly small on this, but I was just curious to test what the time to matchmaking was like, as well as my ping value on my main account versus my bot account, which is what I use for like offline testing for my videos.
Oh, I see what he's doing here.
And I just wanted to see if there was a notable discrepancy between these two. In my eyes, this is the best testing methodology we have right now to test the quote unquote strength of matchmaking. It's not a perfect method of testing this. Ideally, we would have access to the API so we could see other players' stats in our lobby. We could collect all that and see how everybody stacks up against each other. But that's something we don't have access to. So instead, by looking at the amount of time it takes to matchmake, if there is a big discrepancy on the same system with all the same settings and the only variable that's changing is the account, then that can at least potentially give us a pretty solid indication of skill causing some issues here and being considered a little more heavily than the matchmaking time.
So what I'm guessing is going to happen here is he's going to find that as your skill level goes up, matchmaking times become longer. In other words, that minimally considered skill is actually a bit more big than they previously said. And here's what's actually really shady about this is if you go back and look at the statements that were made about skill-based matchmaking, there's a reason why they say skill is minimally considered and things like that, because they're vague statements that can be represented in various different ways. So they couldn't be like sued for false advertising or something like that.
Or the ping. So what I did here is across both accounts, I turned crossplay on and I searched for 10 matches on each account using just the quick play TDM filter, just because TDM tends to be a very popular game mode, and therefore there should be plenty of lobbies available at any given time of the day. And also keep in mind, I did control for time of day. I tested my first 5 lobbies on my main account, then I immediately swapped over to my bot account, did all 10 lobbies there, and then I came back to my main account for the final 5. So I kind of sandwiched them all together. So they were all tested within the same rough time of day, because time of day does play a big factor when it comes to matchmaking. And then with that, I just timed how long it took me to get into a lobby, and then I marked down the ping value I was experiencing in that game as well.
So you did
and
ping
here are the
too.
results that I found across 10 games on each account. As you can see, when it comes to time to matchmake, on average on my main account, it took 34 seconds to get into a lobby, whereas with my...
So you can see by the end of the bot, oh no, it's actually closer than I would have guessed. 6 seconds. That is closer than I would have guessed.
Bot account, it took 28 seconds. So a little bit faster on average on the bot account, but I mean, that's not a massive discrepancy or anything. A few extra seconds to matchmake on average, that's not really a huge deal to me. More importantly though, let's have a look at the average ping values.
Is this going to be wild?
With my main account, my average ping in those 10 matches was 42 milliseconds. That is quite a significant difference.
You know what is actually different? Like the more I look at this, what I actually see is the consistency of the ping, right? Like he had 3 games in a row with 25 and then 2 games with 20 and then 1 game with 25. Like that consistency. Whereas in his actual account, he's got 20, 45, 56, 46, 38, like a wider spread, right? And all higher.
Again, the only thing that has changed here, I controlled for all the variables. The only thing that has changed is the account that I'm playing on. It's the same system, same internet connection, same crossplay options, same time of day, and my connection experience was very noticeably worse on my main account versus my bot account across these 10 matches. And it's also interesting to point out, the best ping that I can get to a Call of Duty server is 20 milliseconds. And my bot account was at least within 5 milliseconds of that
That's what I was
best ping
saying, that
value
consistency.
in 8 out of the 10 matches that I found. My main account, 1 out of 10 matches. And the gameplay you're seeing in the background is that 1 out of 10 matches. So while I do want to reiterate this isn't a massive, proper scientific study by any means, it does seem to suggest a trend is present with this. And it does validate the experience I've been having over the past week, where it just seems that
So this is what we were saying on stream today, is that it's based off of what I felt in matchmaking, it's better than Black Ops 6. A lot better. But there's still something there.
I'm not getting the consistency of gameplay experience as well as ping that I remember getting in the open matchmaking in the beta, at least. Unfortunately, in the beta, I wasn't doing any data collection when it comes to this. I just know that once they added open matchmaking, I remember praising the fact that it seemed more often than not I was getting my best possible ping experience, or like within 5 milliseconds. I was getting a roughly 20 to 25 millisecond ping more often than not, with the odd outlier here or there that would have been like in the 40s or maybe even 50s. But most of my games in the beta, from what I remember at least, were in the 20s with my ping. But with all of that in mind, as much as I hate to say it because I want this game to succeed, I care about this game and I genuinely love the gameplay experience with Black Ops 7. I think in many ways, at least on the multiplayer side, this game is getting a lot of unnecessary hate and negativity towards it. I think they've done a lot of really great things with it. But with that in mind, as I've always said, if I don't like something or if I find something that's wrong with the game, I will always call it out. And so here it is. I don't believe the matchmaking they're using in the open playlists is the same matchmaking we saw in the beta. Ooh. And while the wording is vague and technically minimally considered could mean a wide variety of things, to me, this doesn't appear to be minimally considered relative to another very important matchmaking variable, and what they've always stated over the years is king, and this is ping. If skill is genuinely minimally considered, at least the way that I would describe it being minimally considered, I would expect to see very little variance in my connection experience, regardless of the account that I'm using on the same system with the same internet connection. Again, controlling for all of those variables, there should be a pretty minimal variance in the ping experience. And that's unfortunately not what I was seeing here at all with these tests. Now, do I think the matchmaking in this is as strict as it's been in recent years? No, I do think it is a little bit more open than what we've been experiencing. Like I said, I am seeing some more like outlier games.
So again, this is what I said watching the other video, but this is what a lot of us asked for. It wasn't to get rid of skill-based matchmaking. It was to make the parameters wider so it didn't feel as rigged. But it feels as though we're being lied to now, right? And that doesn't feel good.
Fair. I do get like a very easy lobby, for instance, every now and then. So I do think it is an improvement over what we've had, but not by nearly as much as I'm sure many of us were hoping to see, and also not by as much as what we saw in the open matchmaking in the beta. Now, are there potentially other factors at play here, like the demographics that we're playing in the beta, or even the number of people that we're playing in the beta relative to the number of available playlists that could be accessed? So therefore, is the player pool that you can currently connect to right now when searching in the open matchmaking for one particular game mode, is that a very different looking demographic compared to what we were playing in the beta when searching for that same game mode? Maybe, who knows, with that beta, maybe we had so many people that were in matchmaking at that time that it didn't have to expand the ping range at all to find what the system deemed to be an appropriate skill match. And therefore we were getting faster matchmaking times with lower ping values on average. Or maybe they've actually adjusted some variables with the open matchmaking after the fact and rug pulled us on this. I don't know for sure. All I do know is the experience that I've been having, and I know many others have been having this as well. And I'm not just talking about random people I've been seeing comments from.
Yeah, so it's a similar thing to what he said in the last video. And here's what I think it comes down to. Is he specifically calls it, is this the rug pull that we were all expecting? I think this is not a full-on rug pull. I would call this a rug tug. I don't know why that sounds so bad. But like what I mean by that is they didn't completely renege on what they said and all of a sudden have full-on skill-based matchmaking just like it was in Black Ops 6. It's like, we're going to give you what you want when we're trying to sell you something, and then pull back on it, just tug it a little bit and be like, no, this is actually where it is. So it's slightly better, but not what we thought. And I don't like that. I don't like that at all. And aside from what I have considered to be a pretty good multiplayer launch, this does put a dark cloud over it. And will they address it? Probably not. But Ace, I will say this, good on you for making this video. I didn't think he was going to do anything with skill-based matchmaking, but I mean, testing wise, because he didn't have access to that API, and he did. And I'm glad that he did, because we expected it, but I didn't think it would be so obvious, I guess is what I would say.